I like Morgan State. I really do. And I hear the way that people talk about them. I'm starting to think they can't really be considered a sleeper team in the MEAC, but I really want to know your opinion. Oh, yeah. It's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now, of course, Sam Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make a Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day, every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And though the sports may not be sporting the way that you want them to, FanDuel is going to catch you up and make sure that you are not miserable. So go to FanDuel.com to make every moment more and get started with a daily boost or bonus for all customers, new and existing, all summer long. Go to FanDuel.com to get started. I want to say thank you to everybody who's running up that Fred McNair clip on social media at South Exclusives. If you haven't caught it already, I posted a clip of his reasoning on why he left Alcorn State. I thought it was really good. I thought it was a really good interview. Thank you to everybody who came out live. Thank you to everybody who watched it afterwards. We got good numbers on that interview. If you haven't already checked that out, right? If you haven't already checked out the Fred McNair interview, I think that you should. And not just because I did it, right? Not just because it's my interview or because it's my channel, but I thought that he was very forthcoming. I thought that he was very open. I thought that he was very honest. And it really did give a lot of context to me as a Texas Southern fan of what his side of my school and his story was, and then also with his alma mater, and then how he feels about being at Southern now. So if you love stories, go check out that Fred McNair interview. We'll wrap up today's episode, not quite with a story, but it is another coach, and that is Andre Payne. He'll be coaching Talladega College women's basketball, which is a little bit of a change of pace for him, but a return to the norm at the same time. Andrew Body is in a battle for QB1. He has the advantage, the clear advantage, but he is in a battle, and that's not something that I expected. But let's kick off today's episode with a very important question. Can Morgan State be considered a sleeper? I was thinking this weekend, and legitimately, I was curious. Can I consider Morgan State to be a sleeper? The reason, right, let's go through this thought process. The reason that I even consider them a sleeper is because the top of the MEAC feels rigid. We divided the conference into three tiers. We divided the conference into three tiers based off of the preseason polls, right? And I thought that it was nicely done. You had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, three tiers, all grouped with two teams apiece. And to me, I don't really see much movement in those three tiers, right? So this is the thing about it. I was thinking this weekend, can Morgan State be considered a sleeper? If they're not part of the top two, does that immediately make a team a sleeper? That's the real question. The conundrum within this is that the MEAC, when divided into tiers that we did ourselves, but we based it off of the preseason polls, it's a pretty rigid three-tier system. You have the championship contenders, you have the up-and-comers, and you have the teams that nobody are talking about. I got Morgan State in tier 2. They're an up-and-comer. Does that immediately disqualify them? Because everybody thinks it's North Carolina Central and Howard. Everybody thinks that the North Carolina Central Eagles and the Howard Bison are going to be the two teams who are fighting it out for control of this conference at the end of the year. I don't think that's any disrespect to the other teams. It's been this way for the last 2 seasons. When you look at Howard, when you look at Central, I feel like they generate more comfort and confidence than most people. I'll at least say for myself. But just because they're 1 and 2 and a solid 1-2, I don't think anybody else has earned their way into that tier prior to the season. We'll see once the season starts. Does that immediately make Morgan a sleeper? My difficult part about this is, naturally, if they're not championship contenders, you want to call them a sleeper. But I really think they're more of a surprise than a sleeper. And the difference between that is that with a surprise, you still get discussed like you could be a contender. With a sleeper, nobody's discussing you in that way. Morgan State is probably the most popular team. If you say, hey, who's going to win the MEAC, but it's not Central or Howard, most people will say Morgan State. The other part of this is, and I'll be real simple, I find it very difficult to call a team with Elijah Williams and Eric Hunter a sleeper. We know what Morgan State is going to do defensively. We expect them to be a strong defensive team, especially in that front seven. The question is the offense. The question is Todd Smith coming back for his sophomore season. What is he going to do? He's definitely going to need to improve, but I liked what I saw at the end of last season. I thought that he showed potential. I thought that he was a quarterback who showed flashes. I liked his aggression with trying to target the deep portion of the field. I really did enjoy watching Todd Smith play football. But is Todd Smith going to turn into a quarterback who can take you to a championship? As a sophomore, that's difficult, but that's the questions that we have to ask, because you got Williams and you got Hunter for a year. There's no, oh, well, in a couple of years he'll develop, but who knows the defense is going to be like that by the time that Todd Smith is, I don't know, let's just throw a top 5 quarterback. Todd Smith needs to become good right now. He needs to be, I don't want to say he needs to become good. That feels unfair. Todd Smith needs to show that he can build on top of the flashes that he showed late in his freshman season, because he was still a freshman. At the end of the day, he was still a freshman. In his sophomore year, I need him to step it up, right? But here's my thing. We know, I'll say it again, I'll say it many times, I trust in the Morgan State defense. And when you have a lockdown defense, a defense that you know is going to keep you in every single game, just like if you had a high-powered offense that you feel like can keep scoring every single game, you always feel like the other side of the ball just needs to make a couple of plays. So can Todd Smith, his weapons, the running game, the offensive line, can they produce a couple of plays a game in crucial moments? If they can, I could see Morgan State winning this conference. I could see Morgan State knocking off the top dogs in the conference. I think that the MEAC is very rigid. I said it before. I'll say it again. I think that the MEAC is very rigid. The top 2 teams are the top 2 teams. And I don't think anybody else has earned the right to be considered a championship contender. But I have South Carolina State. I have Morgan State as up-and-comers. And if they were to win it all, it would be a surprise, because I expect the top 2 to be the top 2, but I wouldn't be shocked. And people are already talking about them like they have the potential, because they do, like they have the potential to be a sneaky pick in the MEAC, but that's not a sleeper. Sneaky, maybe. Surprise, maybe. Sleeper, can't go with that S. But yeah, man, this is the way that I look at it. Also, Todd Smith just has to put together a full season. He didn't have a full season last year. He just has to put that together. So, questioning an entire side of the ball is definitely a huge question mark. And it's enough to take you immediately out of championship contending. It's enough to make you a surprise. But I don't think that it's enough to be a sleeper, because people are still talking about Morgan State. They're not Norfolk. They're not Delaware State. Morgan State is being discussed as a really high-level team. And honestly, they're in the conversation. In my opinion, they are in the conversation for a top 5 team in Black college football going into next year. I genuinely believe that. They are in that conversation of teams. It's probably, they're going to kill me. It's probably like 8 teams. Let's try to name them. Let's keep it easy. You got Central and Howard. You got you got Central and Howard. You got Bama State. That's 3 right there that I feel comfortable. I probably have FAMU in that mix. Probably have Alcorn in that mix. PV Jackson State in that mix. Morgan State in that mix. And I'm not saying Morgan State's last of the bunch. I'm just saying they're in that mix. There's no particular order in there. But anyway, let's use Alabama State's mention in this as a segue to look at their quarterback battle. Yes, Andrew Body is the starting quarterback. He's still the clear-cut favorite, but it doesn't seem like he's running unopposed in the way that I would have said he was a month. Matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, I would have said he was unopposed, but it seems like that's not the case. And let's look at who the other person pushing him is as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors, and eBay Motors is the only place that I would tell you to go for any of your car needs. You want to add a little power to your car? Go to eBay Motors. You want to add a little speed to your car? Go to eBay Motors. You want to add some style to your car, go to eBay Motors. God forbid you actually have something wrong with your car, go to eBay Motors. It's just that simple. I don't think that it's a difficult process, right? Like if you're in a car, you got anything to do with a car, you go to ebaymotors.com. It's quite frankly the simplest thing that I would tell you to do on this podcast all day. I'm just being honest with you. Doesn't matter if you need to fix up an alternator. It doesn't matter if you need to get a new oil filter. I mean, not an oil filter, carbon air filter. It doesn't matter if you need to add some LED lights. You want to add whatever it is. You want to add some style to it. You want to add some utility to it. It's all the same. Put your car into the My Garage section. Put your little 2007 Cadillac Escalade in there, and they'll have the parts for you. They have over 120 million parts, so they can find yours for sure. Guaranteed Fit is on ebaymotors.com. That's ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked on HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. And remember, for your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On College Football, because it's that time of the year. It's football season. Make sure you're checking out Spencer McLaughlin, because he is coming up with the best storylines and some of the most important stories that you need to be informed about if you want to be an educated college football fan. So I'm here for the HBCUs. We can get him for the Power Fives, the Power Four, and everything in between. Now, with that being said, Alabama State, I think that's going to be a top dog in Black college football this year. I just named them as one of the top 3, right? And then I have the next 5 teams or so, however many I named, who going to fill in that last 2 spots in the top 5. But I think that they're going to be a big contender. A reason I believe in Alabama State is because of Andrew Body. That is a reason I think that this year is different for them, because I trust in the fact that they have a quarterback. Andrew Body is the clear-cut number 1 at Alabama State, but it doesn't seem as if he's solidified that way forever. There is a slight battle, though he is clearly in the lead. There is a slight battle for QB1, and this is something that I didn't expect. What did I just say to open this show? A big reason that I believe in this year to be different for Alabama State is Andrew Body. That is a large reason for it. You've had great defensive play, but you haven't had good offense. And more specifically, you haven't had good quarterback play. That just has not been something that's happened in the Eddie Robinson era. So with that being something that has been lacking, when you bring in Andrew Body, everybody knows, man. I'm not just saying this because he went to Texas Southern. I don't actually know Andrew Body personally. We didn't have any overlap in school. I genuinely have seen the talent, and I think that he's a good quarterback. That's the reason that I believe, right? I like to say that probably every time. My everydayers may be sick of me giving these caveats on why I believe in Andrew Body, but then again, my everydayers may be sick of me saying I believe in Andrew Body. Well, that's on you, because quite frankly, when he's playing for Alabama State, a team that I think is going to be the best team in the SWAC this year, he's going to get talked about. And I won't have to keep relaying on Texas Southern stuff. I'll be able to speak about what he does in 2024, maybe, because it seems as if Jonah O'Brien is actually pushing him for QB1. Let's get into this, because Coach Robinson spoke about this. I thought this was going to be a keys to the castle type situation for Andrew Body, and it doesn't seem like it is. It's just natural competition, iron sharpening iron. It's natural. Let's make sure we're getting the best player out there no matter what. We may feel like you're going to be, but we're going to bring another guy in to push you. And if you are the best, you'll be the best. But this is what Coach Robinson said about Jonah O'Brien, the transfer from Eastern Illinois. He told him, and I quote, "I told him I didn't bring him in to be a backup. I want him to compete, get reps, and be the best guy. Whether it's him, Body, or Zach Sims, however it works out, we just want to win football games." I think that on one level, this is coach's motivation, but at the same time, you're looking at a guy who's a graduate transfer. It's not as if O'Brien has multiple years to waste. This is his last opportunity. I'm sure he didn't go somewhere where he knew he wouldn't start. So I do think that there's some validity to it. I think it's coach's motivation. I do believe that Andrew Body is the clear-cut favorite. I got that from everything I've seen thus far going throughout the season, but then also from the article that even broke this news. It said that you have you have O'Brien and Body. Jerry Humphrey is the writer, but you have O'Brien and Body who are taking all the 1s and 2s, but Body is the clear-cut favorite. That's how it was discussed when it was even talked about there being a battle. So you have to respect that. I can't only take one part of that man's words when he's a journalist. right? I divide coaches' words all the time. I divide player words all the time because I know I have to cut through some of the BS they be talking about. Some of that stuff don't be for real. Some of that stuff be lip service. But when it's a journalist and somebody who I know does good work, right? I got on good authority that this is a solid guy. I can take him at face value, and I'm gonna take all his words. He's not saying body is on top just to say that, Well, let's look at O'Brien, who O'Brien is. O'Brien, he comes over with a little bit of starting experience. He started 8 games for Eastern Illinois in 2022. He actually has a real back and forth journey. He started off his school at Eastern Illinois, then he transferred. I think it was to Georgia Southern, but don't quote me on that one. But he transferred out of Eastern Illinois for 2 years. One was that COVID year in 2020 where nothing counted against your eligibility. And then the next year was 2021. He didn't play in either one of those seasons. So then he transfers back to Eastern Illinois, wins the starting job, starts for 8 games, but then gets a season-ending injury. So now after that, he comes back to Eastern Illinois for another year. He doesn't really play. So he really only has that 2022 season under his belt. This is going to be interesting because you could argue something similar for Body. Body has that 2022 season under his belt. Then last year, he only played 1 game. The year before that, he was in and out, but he has more starting experience than O'Brien for sure. He played more games in his 2022 season. In 2021, as a freshman, he actually came out there and did play a decent amount of games. But at the same time, it's just interesting when you're looking at the two. Body is 1, O'Brien is 2, but it does seem like they're battling it out for number 1. I believe that Andrew Body, when it's all said and done, will be the guy. I have to see. I wish we had preseason for things like this, but O'Brien's trademark when he was at Eastern Illinois in that 1 year he played was being an accurate quarterback. I could see a defensive-minded head coach saying, all right, well, I know he's going to be extremely accurate. He's probably going to be safe. We know that he can manage the game. He can operate the system. It may not be too much playmaking, but it'll be, I can trust him to make every little play. I can see that. Now, one thing I will say, I'm not a coach. I'm not here to tell Eddie Robinson how to do his job, but I will say this. Everybody give those disclaimers. No disrespect, right? No, but I'm not here to tell Eddie Robinson how to do his job. But I do hope for Alabama State's sake that this competition, though they'll continue to push each other during the season, is not like the competition of previous years. Because in previous years, I don't think quarterbacks were in the game in trying to make plays. I think they were trying not to make mistakes. It's easy to say that. Maybe D Davis just wasn't the guy because he was the most consistent for 2 years. But I know for some players, when you're in there for only a couple of snaps, or you feel like at any moment you could be taken out, you're playing hesitant and you're being scared. But this is the reason that I think for Alabama State's sake, you don't want it to be a back and forth competition. That means you're not playing well, period. And you're probably not winning games. If it's O'Brien, if it's Body, I don't know. But at the end of the day, O'Brien is pushing Body for the number 1 spot. Body does have the top quarterback. He is the starting quarterback right now, and he most likely will be the starting quarterback week 1. Even if O'Brien continues to push, we don't want the hot potato game happening. You don't want to see that, because that a lot of times translates to L's, and it means your season is not going the way that you want it to go. That simple, that plain. That's how we look at it. Now, as you push forward, speaking of seasons not going the way that you wanted it to go, I think we've had some seasons for Coach Andre Payne that haven't went the way he wanted when he was at Mississippi Valley. But he has a history at the NAIA level that makes me very excited for his opportunity with Talladega College's women's basketball team. Let's explore that as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. I love FanDuel because it allows me to make money during the summer, even when sports haven't been sporting the way that I would want them to. Now, maybe you want to get in on some of this WNBA action when it kicks back in after the Olympics. Maybe you're making some money on the Olympics. Football is on the way with preseason if you're feeling risky with that. You have UFC events all the time. You have MLB, everything. So just because the sports may not be sporting the way you want and you're waiting for the fall with football season, doesn't mean you don't have opportunities to make money. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com. Use that because you'll get, or go there because you'll have a daily booster bonus every single day, every single person, new or existing customers, all summer long. It's simple. It's easy. Go to FanDuel.com. Go ahead and put some money down on whatever the favorite sport is of yours at the moment and make every moment more. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked on HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that, for all my everydayers. I understand that when you see Andre Payne, you may think about his time at Mississippi Valley State, but I don't necessarily know if that's the best way to judge him when looking at the fact that he's about to be the Talladega College women's basketball head coach. This is a 6-year gap, number one. He's been coaching for 25 years of his life, but he had a 6-year gap from being on courtside as a head coach. This time it's on the NAIA level and it's women's basketball. These are 2 things that he's familiar with drastically varying degrees. He was on the Alcorn women's basketball staff in 2019 for a year. But he was an NAIA coach since 99 to 2014. So 15 years? He spent 15 years as a coach. Hey, I can count now. But he spent 15 years as a coach on the NAIA level. So he's very familiar there. However, what you may be familiar with him for is what he did in the SWAC. What you may be familiar with him for is his time at Mississippi Valley State. And that wasn't the greatest. It wasn't horrific, but it wasn't the greatest. And they were a very low team during the regular season. And he had one big splash in the SWAC tournament. So though it's not the best metric to grade him by, in my opinion, it's going to be the metric that we lay out first, because I do believe in telling the whole story. If I only told you the points that, I don't know, tell me, I don't know how y'all feel, right? Everydayers, because I know this is everydayers who here now. I'm a contrarian. I'm just going to be honest with you. I play devil's advocate on a regular basis. I like to look at all of the different angles of things. And a lot of times I'll look at the points that maybe don't make my point, but they tell a full picture. And that's my thing for you, man. I don't sit here. I know a lot of you want to tell me I don't know what I'm talking. Not a lot, but when I talk about your team in a negative fashion, I hear you don't know what you're talking about. When I ain't talking about your team, it's love, but it's love always from me. That's neither here nor there. But you can disagree with me. I'm okay with that. That's not a problem to me. What I will say is I try to paint the full picture to allow you to make your own decision. I want to inform you, which partially means giving my side of it, but I also want to give you every single aspect. So if you feel like his Mississippi Valley State time is more valuable, then you can feel that way. I don't. But in, 2014, every single year, 2014 to 2016 starting, so 14, 15, 15, 16, 16, 17. In all 3 of those seasons, he finished 7th in the conference. He finished 7th in the conference, but in 2015, that 2015 started, okay. I hate when basketball season transfers. We're going to refer to every single year as the year that he started playing. So you start playing in the winter. 2015, so starting that December 2015 season, he ended up being the 7th seed, but they went to the semifinals. So they had a little bit of a run in that spring tournament. But that was the only time he made a run. It's the only time he won a playoff or won a tournament game. 7th in his first year, 7th in the second year. That's how I should have done in the first place. 7th in his third year. It's a holy number, but it's a terrible trinity when you're looking at standings. 8th in his 4th year, 9th in his 5th year. So he made the tournament in his first 4 seasons, but it wasn't great. And you see his regular season are never great at Valley. But I'm not too stressed about that. I have to paint it because it's definitely concerning on what he was able to do on a higher level. But if he's coming back to the NAIA level, then I can look at what he did at Texas College. I can look at what he did at Wiley University. I can look at these times and say, I like that. I can look at the NAIA time and say he went 239 and 183. So 239 wins, 183 losses over the course of 13 seasons. I can look at the fact that he was one of the youngest head coaches at Talladega College when he got that job at 25 after just 2 years on the staff. Come on, y'all. These are 25 years old. He was coaching players who were his age. He was coaching his peers, and that's a sign of respect. That's a sign of respect because you don't get that easily. You don't get trusted with that at that age just because. He had to show a lot of promise. He had to show a lot of intellect. He had to show a lot of things that transferred into him having a long-standing a long-standing collegiate coaching career as a head coach, not just as an assistant. He's done that over the last 6 years, but from 2001 to 2014, he was the head coach at Texas College and then at Wiley University. And at Wiley University, he had 320 win seasons. He had a 25 win season, which was a school record that he set. He was able to bring them to the NAIA tournament 2 times, 2007 and 2014. You're looking at a guy who on an NAIA level was a winner. When I'm looking at Andre Payne, you have the Mississippi Valley State time, and you have the time that he had on the NAIA level at Texas College and Wiley University. If he's coming down to Talladega at the NAIA level, I know that it was farther in the past, but that's the thing I'm going to lean on. I'm going to look towards the fact of what did you do when you were at the NAIA? And you took a team to the tournament twice. You had 321 seasons, a 25-win season, set a school record. You were able to become a very young head coach, which is a sign of trust. This is all on the NAIA level. Talladega has somebody who has established themselves. I paint the full picture for you, and you look at what you want to look at. He struggled at Valley. It was not pretty. And if he was at Alcorn now, I will be having question marks on, is this going to work? But instead, he's with Talladega. They're looking to come back to the they haven't won a conference tournament since 2020 and a winning season since 2022. That's not a long drought. There's probably multiple teams in that conference with a longer drought than Talladega College. But at the same time, it's a drought nonetheless, and that shows where they're trying to get back to. I just showed you where Payne's trying to get back to. Now, in tomorrow's episode, we'll be back. We'll be back looking at, I know we'll probably look at some of the preseason stuff, talk about preseason a little bit, not dig into it too deeply. That'll probably close out tomorrow's episode, and I'll figure out what tomorrow's episode to start with. But in the meantime, in between time, until the next time we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.